Good afternoon everyone, thank you very much for joining me on this latest upload, and I just want to say thank you for your patience on waiting on this. The last couple of weeks has been quite busy. 10-12 days ago I started to get quite a lot of messages for people needing help with universal credit, so I had a few calls on that to deal with, along with the work commitments. It's just trying to juggle all three of them. I've actually had to add a Saturday to my week now, obviously to cover things due to the fact that I'm working Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but I'll try and get these videos out to you as quickly as possible. The good thing is about not being able to post, it keeps the ideas for content up. I've actually got 3 ideas for videos that's starting to build up, so I suppose I would rather have it that way than having plenty of time and having to sit and think about content. So it would appear that it seems to come more like since I've started working again, like out doing manual labour. It's crazy the zip that it's given me, and it's definitely up the productivity, there's no doubt about it. So thank you very much to everyone that continues to comment, likes, subscribes and shares. One thing I will say before I start, if you want to keep up to date with the videos, you're probably going to have to log into the channel. I know I say it's usually most weeks I do it. Recently, as I've just explained, it's not been like that, but if you want to stay up to date with it, a lot of people aren't getting notified, so just check the channel every week. So in today's video, recently it's weird how things start to happen for me, how a subject comes along. Like I've mentioned in videos recently where I've been watching the BBC archive from days gone by, and I came across obviously the mining strikes. And it really did, it got me thinking just how big a number these organisations, we'll call them, these green organisations have done on us, that are funded by the elite families to try and convince us that the environment's been completely ruined and that the only alternative is to go down their road of sustainable development, Agenda 21 and other green agendas like it. Now, they had to convince everyone that the pit closures from the 1980s and 90s were something that had to be done. It wasn't sustainable, they weren't making money, and that was the reason for it. Now, they have done some number on us, ladies and gentlemen, with this, because, I mean, this is actually quite close to me and my family, because my great-grandfather, he was a coal merchant in the first 7 years of my life. He was still walking among us, and the business was still running, certainly for the first 5-6 years of my life. And some of my earliest memories are obviously running about his house, at his yard, playing on lorries and stuff like that, going to the coal yard, etc. So it's quite close. I mean, my brother, he actually runs a plant and machinery now because of that, because that's what he was brought up in. So it is quite a close thing. I mean, my great-grandfather, he wasn't a nice man. I'm not going to sit here and say he was. He was quite tyrannical. He was also very high up in the coal board. He was not someone I don't think I would have trusted, to be honest with you, certainly in this day and age. But that's the type of men that were in that business. That's not to say all were like that. But they knew, and he knew, and he used to say at the time that when gas central heating and things like it started to come in, when he was still alive, he would say that, yeah, they'll get everyone off coal, and then they'll do them over. I don't think he put it quite as pretty as that, but words to that effect. And it's true, because they've convinced us that it's completely destroyed the planet. Now, I'm not saying that we should go all out and completely destroy the planet. Everything needs to be balanced out. But when you consider that the vast majority of properties, certainly up until the 1990s or 80s anyway, would have had a hole in the wall in the living room where you could put fuel in for burning that would then keep you warm. Now, if times were tough and you didn't have any money for a few days or whatever, there was places where you could go to certain collieries that you could pick free coal. Obviously a lot of them didn't like it, but there was certain ones that you could do it just to get your day's energy. That aside, you could even go walks in woods and pick up a few bits of wood, or maybe if you had some old papers, that you could, anything at all that could keep you warm, you could put your energy into going and getting some fuel for your fire. but that's been taken away from us. The central heating agenda has been pushed on us, and now it's just the flip of the flip of a switch takes the energy away. Now, the mining strikes of the 1980s, they could come out and strike. It gave the people a lot more power. And Arthur Scargill at the time did say, like, that if they had, well, they kept offering them these productivity bonuses, and if they'd fallen for it, they would regret it, as would their children and their children's children. Now, that was 40 years ago. And we've got the benefit of hindsight, and we can all look back now, and we can see what he meant. We can see what the people that joined the picket lines, they knew it deep within their souls that something was seriously wrong, that if these bloody pits were being allowed to close down, then not only would it take away our right to work, our industry, freedom to go and do things, to make wages, but it would kill the very communities that made us. And these communities, everything revolved around these pits. I mean, they would have like weekends away together with their families. They would play in football leagues, bowls, all those kinds of things. And everything, and certainly in some areas, revolved around that pit. So when you take that away, that's fine. Everything's got to be done in the name of progress. But if you don't replace that with anything, then you, as a society, are going to run into problems. And this is what the film Trainspotting was about. It was the post-industrial era in Britain and what that could bring. Because, I mean, it's not very nice going out and giving your time up all the time, but I've got to be honest, me going back out to do manual labour, I feel much better, and I do, because there's less screen time. It's like going back in time, and I work with a digger driver who's 77, and he does it for no other reason than for the love of the job. And I say that to him all the time, that it's stuff has to still be done, and yet everyone still wants. I mean, everyone seems to just want to kick their feet up and have digital incomes. And yes, that's a very nice thing to have, but the roads still need put down, things still need built, manual labour still needs to be conducted, and you need to be willing to engage in it, and those miners certainly were. Their slogan was coal not dole, but now people are being pushed onto the dole, when even when I was younger it was seen as a bit of a stigma attached to it. Unemployment, because you can't go out and live the life that you want to live. I mean, some people can't do that even when they're in employment now. And the thing about the mines was, and people would say that at the time, oh, they need to be closed down, or some people that weren't wanting to go into the picket lines, they were just worried about themselves, about the fact that, well, my kid needs shoes this week, or I need fed this week, or whatever, and yet so did the people who were on the picket lines. But they were willing to fight. They had a bit of fight about them to go out and stop this agenda, because they bloody knew what it meant. Now, the reasons for pit closures, and some come to the end of their lives, it's inevitable, really, like, and that's fine. But they were closing a lot of pits that were sustainable, but they weren't making a lot of profit. So because of that, they were using that as an excuse to then close the pit down. And it actually, or the pit's down, and it actually got really, really nasty. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been watching quite a few documentaries, reading a lot about the tactics used by Maggie Thatcher and her police, and it was obviously policy when you look at Hillsborough. One of the strikes, or one of it's called the Battle of Orgreave. I think that's how it's a place in Rotherham, or near Rotherham in South Yorkshire. And some people say that it says it in that documentary on Channel 4 that after the Battle of Orgreave, the way we were policed was changed forever, and I would probably agree with that, because what happened, some of the tactics, and you can listen to some of the police officers that done interviews now that were there at the time. And they weren't told a lot, but they knew by some of the training that they were getting that things that something had changed. being asked to start shifts at 3 o'clock in the morning, which wasn't that outside the box, but they, when you're assembling with hundreds more police officers, they said at the time they knew something was wrong. Now the Battle of Orgreave, when they moved in, I mean, you can still watch a reenactment of it from 2001, but the police were used as it was police brutality. I mean, that's what it was. There's absolutely no two ways about it, and we can actually look back at the divide and rule and the propaganda that they used at the time to divide people, so that they could obviously advance their agenda. And I think that's why we need to look back on it now, especially now, because we can learn a lot from it. Now, Maggie Thatcher at the time, when you watch any conference or any clip of her talking about the miners, there's only one word that you can use, or that I could use, to describe her, and that was viciousness. There was a viciousness about her. She called them the enemy within, because she would lobbying, and she would have been well aware of the World Economic Forum and things like it, and these NGO, non-governmental organisations, not for profit and all that nonsense. That was, oh, we just care about the environment and we would like to advance humanity. And it's like, no, you would like to advance an agenda. But anyway, Maggie Thatcher, she, there was a viciousness about her. And what they did was, during Orgreave, because it was the location that it was originally in, and apparently there were signs put up to direct the people into the location that the police wanted them. And the reason for that was because when they were in an open field, they couldn't use the riot gear, because I think at the time anyway, riots had to be defined that the public or innocent people had to be at risk. In an open field, that's not the case. It's just the miners and the police. So what they did was, they used this, I think this was the first time they'd started to use these types of tactics, according to some of the police of the time, where they would have I think it was the long shields in the front and the short in the back, and they would take 10 steps forward, sort of like a shield wall if you've seen a Vikings programme, and push them forward. And that was done to direct them into sort of suburban areas, so that it could then be used, that, well, the Riot Act could be used, that other people, and that's why that was done. And then the brutality that followed was nothing short of despicable, and it was a police state. And it's actually interesting, because one of the miners that protested at the time, he was in the documentary, and he had actually said it was Orwellian, and it was very interesting. It wasn't just a novel or a story. This was George Orwell's 1984 in real life, and it's very, very interesting that it was in 1984. And this is the thing, Maggie Thatcher, they weren't stupid. They used to give all the overtime out, so they would build up the coal reserves, so that when strikes did happen, it didn't have too much disruption on the country. But what she did was to obviously put the chink in the chain, to stop all the pits sort of uniting. She had given Nottinghamshire all these extra bonuses, etc., and they didn't want to go out and strike. Now I would just like to sort of, I just wonder just for a second if the people of that time have indeed learned their lesson and have seen why now the people fought so hard at the time to stop this agenda being advanced, this green agenda. And I would just love to know if they have indeed accepted that they were on the wrong side of it. And I know everyone should have the right to believe what they want, and fear comes into it, and I get it. You don't want your kids going without if you can help it. But they needed unity, all of them, to say, look, we might argue, we might envy each other at times, whatever, but we are together on this. These pits cannot close, because if you close the pits, you'll close down the community and you'll kill the soul of Britain. And that's exactly what's been done. And it's the same for the steel. And look what's came of it. We still need steel, so why have we closed it down? I mean, I can remember when the Ravenscraig was demolished, and I seen the dust of that place from my mum's bedroom when I lived in Humains. And I remember at the time, I'd be 8 or 9 at the time, just the sadness around the place. Like my dad and that, and his friends would all be going on about how sad a day it was. Even though I didn't know what that was to mean, I could still feel it within myself. that something was seriously wrong with it. And those people that were picketing at the time for the miners' strikes, they were called vicious people and violence and all the rest of it. But even if they couldn't articulate why these pits couldn't be closed, and like I say, we've got hindsight, they still fought to try and stop them getting closed because they wanted a good future for their kids. And now again, I'm from the future, we all are. We look back on it, and it's not going well, is it? I mean, they were right. They were the people in the picket lines were right. They were right to do what they done. And then, like I said, they've took away the steel industry along with steel and coal. That was our economy. Coal was our economy. There's still 145 million tonnes of coal to be mined in Britain. And here's the thing as well, every single one's been closed, deep coal mine. And all that machinery, it was all assembled, everything, it's just left there. Just all been left to advance the green agenda of Agenda 21 and the Club of Rome, which is a secret society from the Round Table that was set up, I can't remember exactly, I think it was the Rockefellers it was set up with. It's been a while since I've researched it, but it's like a round table of secret societies that when you join it all up, it makes a pentagram. It's all symbolism for them. But they'd said in the 60s, the Club of Rome did, that they were going to use the environment and to scare people in to saying that if they didn't give control over to them, the environment would destroy them, and they would die. And this is the thing, they play on people's fears, same with viruses, they play on people's fear of death, or the fear of the extinct, or the fear of something coming to an end. And as I said before, pits come to an end, everything does. But that doesn't mean to say you need to replace it. It needs, and this is the thing with pits, you've got to, if it was sustainable and people were kept in a job, even if you're not making a lot of profit, it's still sustainable, you're still using something that we need. Now, it made me, this is why I was just kind of researching it a wee bit, wasn't actually going to do a video on it until I'd seen that in September 2024, the High Court has just quashed the reopening, or the UK's first deep coal mine opening in 30 years, and it was going to be opening in Cumbria. And places like the Climate Change Committee, which was established in 2008, 2007 I think it was, they've basically put all, I don't know how they done it, but they got it into the High Court. It's very easy when you're part of the agenda, and the High Court quashed it on the grounds that we didn't need the coal, and that it was obviously a victory for the environment that this had been quashed. Now obviously, I'm sure you'll agree, as I said before, there's an energy crisis now. If you have got a bloody hole in your wall and you can get some coal, at least then you'd be a little bit warm. And it actually, I mean, you go and try and get a bloody log burning stove, try and get the planning for that now, they're stopped, they're trying to get them banned. And even it's just come out of Ireland in this week that they want to ban all coal fires and anything that's to do with burning fossil fuels, because it's all to advance the green agenda. Now I just wonder if people at the time that were saying the picketers were just violent thugs, guys like, there was a guy called Roland the Rat who was basically going around, and he was right, he was saying that it was, because some of the strikes were illegal, it wasn't done by the union's own protocol, and so that therefore it was right that he could go back to work and others could as well. And he was saying it was legal, it was all about legality. And he was in the documentary as an older man, and I'd love to have said to him, like, well, not just because it was legal, it doesn't mean it was right. As we've said many times, apartheid was legal, it doesn't make it right. Now maybe, hopefully, he didn't, obviously, because he did say, he says, look, I was only wanting to, I did see it from their point of view, that why they wanted to work the picketers, but they didn't see it from his point of view. And I just wonder now what he thinks about Britain in general, because it's been completely ruined. Like that digger driver I told you about, I worked the 70s guy at 77, he'd said there's absolutely no doubt about it that phones in general have killed the conversation. And the place has been completely ruined, and the reason that is because there isn't as many jobs to go around. It isn't as readily easily to go into employment. not as many people want to do it because it's easy to just pull a smartphone out. And this is what I was explaining to Derek the Digger Driver. Even when the internet first came out, to log into it, you still had to be in your house. Nowadays, kids taking their phones, they bring what they watch at home to work with them. And we couldn't do that, and that's become a serious problem. So, and this has all came from the closing down of our industry. And again, not everybody wants to do it, and how many people would want to go down a coal mine now? However, if it comes that it needs to be balanced out and it needs to be done, Michael Gove it was that signed it in. I mean, he would just, I didn't do too much research into that, I just seen it and it was done it, but he would have been in full awareness of what was actually going on, and it was just going to be a risk, it was going to get quashed anyway, so it would have been no different to him. And it's just like, well, the High Court quash it on the fact that they're saying we don't need the coal. Well, a lot of people would beg to differ, because it is about control, and the miners going out and strike, that was why she called them the enemy within, Maggie Thatcher, because those miners going on strike, it gave the people power, and she did not want the people having power. She wanted law and order. She was an old tyrant. As I said before, I would proudly, as a proud Scotsman, piss on her grave, and I would video it for the record. Because people like her have destroyed this country. And I was actually watching, I've watched quite a lot of debates at the time from members of the National Coal Board, the head, I think Ian McGregor, or Ian Gregory's name is, and the guy that preceded Arthur Scargill, Joe Gormley, I think his name was, and they were just sitting, two guys that disagreed, one on one side, one on the other, something that the woke side of culture have labelled toxic masculinity. Like that great grandfather of mine, he'd no way get away with doing some of the stuff he's done then now. It just wouldn't happen. And it's called toxic masculinity. But anyway, these two guys are sitting and they're having a and it was actually quite interesting to sit and watch it, because they were having a debate, two opposing beliefs, and the guy from the coal board, it was amazing that he turned around and said to Joe Gormley, he says, look, just never mind about political parties. Forget about that on this, because they're all aligned on it. They want to start closing pits down, whether they're coming to their end of their life cycle or not. And the goal was to eventually close every single mine in the UK, because they wanted this green agenda. And some of the miners at the time, it's absolutely amazing. Because they were rioting, they were trying to put them in jail for life. Life imprisonment. Because guys like Ray Clements, who was the chief constable at the time, said they didn't have the right to be there. And he was actually asked, Ray Clements, this was at the Battle of Orgreave, he headed it up, it was his idea, he was asked, if a miner was trampled by a mounted police officer and he died basically, would that matter to you? And his exact words were, I wrote this down, first he said if there was going to be a showdown it would be on his terms, and then he was asked if the protester was trampled, it would not concern him in the slightest. And then they fabricate a lot of lies. Again, it was the Hillsborough tactics. The police in the 1980s, they were statements, certainly for events like this, were written in pencil so that it could be doctored. That's what was done with Hillsborough, and that's what was done with this. And some of the statements they were using, some of the statements that we're using, they were all the same, like the same as Hillsborough. It was every single officer was saying exactly the same statement, and they were basically saying that they were being attacked by miners. Now, the police's own video, it was that actually got these miners off with a conviction, or so they didn't get jailed for life with it, because what the police were saying in the statements was the opposite to what was seen on the police's video. Now this is why Arthur Scargill had a video unit. That's what they called. Well, it wasn't officially called that for the miners' union because of the propaganda. They wanted to make sure everything was filmed. Now, when you've got guys like Ray Clements heading this, these are the guys. It just blows my mind how these guys get to these bloody positions. And it ended up, it was the longest. It was a 48-day trial. It was the longest public disorder trial in British history. And actually, one of the lawyer that defended them, Garrett Pierce. If any of you have ever seen, if you heard of the Guildford pub bombings, when the people there was a miscarriage of justice, like they were wrongly accused. The film's called In the Name of the Father. Daniel Day-Lewis plays brilliant. Emma Thompson plays her in it. She defended the miners, and she couldn't believe, what she was seeing. There was actually a barrister that had said she'd never seen police corruption like it. I can't remember her name. Margaret Russell, her name was. Yes, she had. It is the most shocking bit of corruption regards to police witness statements that she'd ever seen. And Hillsborough was very much the same, and it was tactics that was used. And this is why Maggie Thatcher is so universally hated in this country and in England. Well, some parts in the North of England anyway, because of what she stood for. Because she was a tyrant, she was the Iron Lady. And there was nothing that was going to stop the pit closure, ladies and gentlemen. It wouldn't have mattered how many people picketed. And hats off to the people that did, honestly, that had the strength to go without. And how dare they call us people like that, useless eaters who can actually go without and to stand up for something that they believe in. I'd love to see a politician doing that. They get paid to stand up for things that they believe in. Well, I suppose they could. I suppose you could say they do stand up for things to believe in. It's just not good for us, is it? It's for their masters. And when you actually look at the science of climate change and all the rest of it, I mean, they say the science is settled, and I disagree completely. And if you go back to my bloody climate change video, then you'll see that it is a bit of a scam. Not just a bit of a scam, it's a massive scam, because I mean, like CO2 again, how can the effect come before the cause? Carbon dioxide cannot be the cause of rising temps when the increase in temp comes before the increase in CO2. That's what Patrick Moore said. So how can that be? It's almost like nature repairs itself. So when we burn fossil fuels, the temperature will increase. Then the CO2 goes up because that's what plants breathe. And then if plants breathe, that means we can breathe. So it's almost like nature balancing things out, because that's what nature does. So this has all been closed down on the grounds that the environment's been ruined because we've been mining fuel, or mining fossil fuels and burning them and putting it up into the atmosphere. But that's nothing compared to what they do to the atmosphere. The weather technology that they're using to make us all think that the environment is being destabilised, and that has caused it, when actually it's them using technology by punching bloody holes in the ionosphere and bouncing low frequencies into them. It's which then steers the jet stream, and that's what they all say. There's even weather readers, there's something weird going on with the jet stream, and that's what it is. They know how to steer it through this technology, which creates bad weather patterns or extreme weather patterns. Not to mention the axial precession of the Earth's axis. It can make it more extreme in one hemisphere in summers and less extreme in others, and vice versa. And that all comes from the wobble of the Earth's axis, which it's like cycles within cycles within cycles. As I mentioned in that video, it's a 26,000 year cycle. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. And when that cycle ends, the 26,000 years, which just by coincidence would have it in 2012, then temperatures increase and weather gets more extreme, because that cycle has ended. And every time it does, it creates a geometrical alignment that happens only once in that time period. So that is what gives, even if they weren't manipulating weather, we would see extreme weather patterns because of that. But when you add the weather manipulation to it, And I'm sure you'll all agree that this has been the coldest summer I can, in my 37 years of being on this planet, and the 34 summers I can remember, 35, this has definitely been the cold, or that was the coldest I'd ever experienced, and many others have said it as well. And it's all, see, this is why they need to keep knowledge from us. They need to keep this knowledge from us, because then they can use their divide and rule tool in communities to advance their agenda. Because as long as we're fighting with each other, we're not looking at them. And it was pure divide and rule. It's amazing when you look back just 40 years later, just how blatant and obvious it is. And it's why people like Arthur Scargill did set up video units, because, and the only question I would have had for Arthur Scargill was, well, how were you getting wages when these strikes were happening? But apparently I heard one of the miners in documentaries say that he didn't get his wages, so that's fine as long as he's with the people. And he did come up against Maggie Thatcher and against this green agenda, and I know a lot of the climate change stuff and that wouldn't have been, it wasn't really used at that point. It was just the fact that the mine's sustainable. It was done under the guise of, oh well, it's not making money, so we need to sort of move it on. But they knew, I would place money on Maggie Thatcher would have been briefed on where this where this was going to be taken, and it's just unfortunate that we'd fell for it. But all is not lost, because, like I say, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and we have been repeating it. I don't think we can deny that. Not all of us, but when you look at the things that are going on in the country at the moment, we are repeating it, regardless of, like, there may be people coming from like other countries. It doesn't really matter. We still can't fall for it, because they are changing society, and it began, that would have been the next stage of it in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, to start shutting down industry, and that was when the propaganda started coming out that, oh, the CO2 is increasing and it's bad for you, and there's actually twice as much CO2 in the bloody oceans as there is in the air. So what are they going to start doing? They're going to start draining the oceans. I mean, it does beg the question, doesn't it, if that is what they're going to do. It's just, it's not that. It's just like my nose is, it's 45 times more CO2 in the ocean than there is in the atmosphere. So surely it's obviously needed then. I'm sure you'll agree, but we've been convinced that, oh, this is bad and we need to, the environment's been damaged, so we need to take away your industry. Those that you can get to believe absurdities will commit atrocities. See Nazi Germany. And that's sort of where we're getting at to with it, ladies and gentlemen. It's we're so close to that type of dystopian society. It's unreal. I mean, like I say, it's the agenda's advancing. I've just seen a bloody van leave there that's obviously been flickering about and installing 5G. That's having detrimental effects to the environment. They don't seem to care about that. China's emissions are worse than anybody's. They don't seem to care about that, because everything that they're doing, our government seem to want to replicate. They'll still be burning fossil. They went nuclear. It's everything they want. It's for their agenda, because people, we're not facing the events of the day. It's like, as I said in my last video, we've got so comfortable living in the lie that the truth bothers us. And I've got this book here. It was sent to me by someone from Claire at UK Column News. Thank you again, Claire. It's Agenda 21, and I'm actually, this is the next video. It's going to be on this after I've read it fully, because I've not read it all yet. Your Life in Their Hands, and I'm just going to read. This is in support, political support for the Green Agenda, and this was according to the United Nations. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, and the closure of the mines and the pits. That falls within that. There's no two ways about that. Unlike anything the world has ever experienced, and you're not joking. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources and individuals. So that would require manipulation to get, because if you're not telling the truth and what you're saying can be disproved, then you would need to manipulate the individual to change their ways, which is exactly what they're doing. And people drive around in a green car and they think that they're saving the world, and it's ridiculous because they're not. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision making at every level, and that's what it was. It was seen as environmental. The environmental consequences were too great. We need to move it on. Oh, it's great. We just need to press a button on. We don't need to. And I remember again, like I say, come from my gran was a coal merchant's daughter, and the first 7 years of my life, I didn't know anything else but coal fires. And it was dirty to clean it out, and it could be quite hard work and all the rest of it, but that's okay, we can just switch it on now. And they can just switch it off. Don't ever forget that. Couldn't switch your coal fire off, could they? All you needed to do was get someone to burn it, some coal. I know, they used manipulation for that as well. My great-grandfather got around it though. He actually lost his job in the coal board for it, because he was redeploying lorries to Home Hill instead of where they were supposed to be going, obviously to supply people. And this next bit made me chuckle. According to the former UK Minister and member of the Privy Council, Peter Mandelson, who in those circles is known as the Prince of Darkness. Now, I liken that to if you were in Nazi Germany and they nicknamed you the Butcher. To be a Nazi, doing the job that they wanted you to do would have been bad enough. But if they then nickname you the Butcher on top of that, then I think your activities are probably coming from the devil himself. And it's the same with Peter Mandelson being called the Prince of Darkness in the circles that he's involved in. And this is what he said with regards to this green agenda. This transition to low carbon is an environmental and an economic imperative and opportunity for us. It is also inevitable that there is no high carbon future for us. The huge industrial revolution that is unfolding and converting our economy to low carbon is going to present huge business and employment opportunities, as well as enabling us to meet our climate change targets and reduce our energy consumption. We've reduced our energy consumption, sir, because no one can afford to buy it now. And then you look at Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband is an utter scumbag of a guy. Honestly, he'd actually do anything. He would do anything to advance his own agenda. And actually, what I did was, I did have an article from him, but he'd appointed Rachel Kite. Oh, just bear with me a second here. Yeah, I appointed Rachel Kite to this position, and she's involved in an investment fund in the Caymans. Just bear with me a second here, because I thought I had that saved. It's obviously yeah, here it's here. So Energy Secretary Ed Miliband said all the proper process were followed when appointing the UK's climate envoy, as he accused the Conservatives of making baseless allegations. Rachel Kite was recently appointed the UK's Special Representative for Climate, a role which aims to further the country's green goals internationally, including at COP summits. In the Commons on Tuesday, Shadow Energy Minister Joy Morrissey questioned whether Miss Kite's links to Quadrature Capital, a company which has donated $4 million to the Labour Party, had been declared to officials. Now, see, this is the thing, like, because they know that this is what Mandelson was talking about with big business, so I wanted to say it, because, yeah, they took it away from us, the mines and all that industry, they took our opportunities to work away, and they're giving it to big business, to people like this Miss Kite, who's head of these bloody Quadrature Climate Foundations, that think that, well, that's okay, because my bank account's looking pretty sweet, so this is the way the world has to go. Now, I'm not saying that she's one of the gang even, because I think she was at Tufts University and she taught at some school or something, so she's probably just been somebody, because people get manipulated into believing their agenda, and they can spout out some seriously good bullshit that make them sound like they know what they're talking about, and to the uninitiated, to people that haven't researched it, they might sound like they know what they're talking about, and they most certainly don't, because all they're doing is they're pushing lies. And I'll go into more of that book there when I do the next video. I'll be recording it after this one. And this is what Ed Miliband said about Miss Kite. She's an esteemed person who is recognised for her leadership and all they can do is fling around baseless allegations. Well, they're not baseless because it's true what they're saying. During energy security and net zero questions, Miss Morris said, "May I congratulate the Secretary of State's appointment of Rachel Kite for his climate envoy to support his work with international partners." And before her appointment, did the Secretary of State declare to officials her links with the Quadrilateral Capital that donated $4 million to the Labour Party? And also, did the Secretary of State declare her links to the Green Initiative Foundation that gave him $99,000? A yes or no answer will suffice. And he couldn't even do that. They refused to do the yes or no answer. Mr Miliband replied, all the proper processes were followed by the Foreign Office, who were in charge of the employment. And I have to say, this is a very, very sad reflection of the Conservative Party. But it wouldn't matter if it wasn't followed. This is the point I'm making. It would not matter if it wasn't followed, because this is the agenda. This is the agenda of these families, these tyrants that run this shit, that want to take it to the next level, where an awakening's taken out of the equation, where everyone is uploaded to what they're calling the cloud, where society completely changed, we're up wired to bloody machines basically. That is what they want. And these idiots that are in these green agendas, and oh, it's okay, I'm getting 200 grand a year, whatever it is, so I'll be alright. And oh, maybe it is a good idea, just because your bank account's looking, so it doesn't matter. See, it wouldn't matter to me what I was sitting with. If someone came to me and said, there's 100,000 a year to advance this, to hand out these leave for this green agenda or whatever, I would have to refuse it on principle. And I know people would say that's bullshit, mate, but I couldn't do that. I would need to work for someone where, because how can you be true and authentic if your heart's not fully in it? And some of these people do a brilliant job, like Rachel Kite, that peddle their particular brand of bullshit and advancement, not only of this agenda but themselves. And I think it's very, very important that we look back on the mining strike, because there's still 145 million tonnes of coal in Britain that's still there. So if people are there's an energy crisis and there's sanctions from across seas and all the rest of it, why are we not using that resource? The truth is because they don't want you to have it. It's the same as knowledge. They do not want you to have it. They know what people like me and like me are saying is true. They just do not want you to know it. But it's time we did know it. And I think a good place to start with regards to how they use their tactics against us and how they get us to fight with each other to advance this bloody nonsense that they've tried to push onto us, that is a brilliant place to start, because it's got everything in it. It's got police corruption, fabricated lies, police brutality. It's got people that are fighting for their communities. And I mean, I know I've been to a couple of protests and stuff like that, and I know there is a lot of people still protest, but like I keep saying to my mum and others, there's still not nearly enough people in this truth movement, although it is increasing as the weeks go on. But there's still not nearly enough, because there's still people that believe in the state. And I think when you see each police witness within this has committed perjury, like from the Battle of Orgreave. Go back and watch it and you'll see that, and it's no different now. It's still the same now. There's two-tier policing going on now. It's just, there is police brutality, there's no doubt about it. That's what happens when we just stand back and don't do anything about it. And I'm still see it here, and with people in my life, you say stuff to them and they just bloody get their phone out and think that I'll just pretend that he didn't say that, and then that means it's not true. Well, just because you're pretending you didn't hear it doesn't mean it's not true. And we really need to start growing up and start facing the facts here, ladies and gentlemen, that men in dark suits, the ones from the 80s, the 90s, now all through the decades, they've never, or very few of them, have had our best interests at heart. And we need to start learning that. And when we do learn it, then I think we really can start to progress. But it starts with yourself. It starts with taking responsibility for first and foremost for the mistakes you've made, the mistakes you are making, and the mistakes you're going to make, because we'll still make them. That's a blueprint. Taking responsibility. It sounds so simple. It can't be that simple. But when you start taking responsibility on an individual level, it leads you to the next level. Absolutely no doubt about that, because I'm living proof of it. I hope you have enjoyed this upload. I would like to thank you for your continued support, as I said at the start of the video. I wish you all the best. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you on the next one.